and then correct. And then this recording will be available on our YouTube channel. Yes. So, and I will give the participants all the relevant links, so they will be able to listen to the recording if they feel like it. Okay, if you see new participants coming, let them in. In the meantime, I am going to
you have to make me co-host to do it though.
Ah, yes. See, so you are not a co-host even. Wow. No. All right. So back to the role of co-host. Yes.
Co-host.
Right. You are a co-host. Yeah. So
and
you
I
will
can admit as well. Okay.
Very well. Great. So as you let some more people in, I would like to welcome all the participants of this webinar. This webinar is the webinar with Debbie West, who has been my friend for a while already from IATEFL Poland conferences. We first met at an IATEFL Poland conference, and Deb, who is a person who cares about inclusion, has included me in some or included me in some of her projects that she offered to us during a conference. So once I was participating in some kind of active lively game, and once I heard the story of the Krakow Dragon, and it was a lot of fun. In her bio, Debbie wrote that she's UC Berkeley grad, and she has been brought up in a military family, and that is something that I haven't known until today.
Oh, okay.
And she has done many things in education in California first, but right now she teaches in France for all levels and all ages. So we can ask her for advice about anything that is connected with
I don't know.
EFL. And she's fully aware of the fact that learning and teaching have cultural challenges. Yes, and that is something that we should all be aware of. Yes, and at her heart, as she wrote, she is an educator, and therefore she encourages people to get real life experience while learning and while speaking the language they study. And in today's webinar, together with Debbie, we are going to revisit speaking activities just to encourage our students. Why? Because in language acquisition, speaking can happen at an early age, but in fact, it doesn't. Yes, classroom atmosphere limits it, not to say kills it. But in Debbie's opinion, there are many ways to encourage and motivate our students to speak confidently, and she is going to inspire us with her ideas. So over to you, Debbie.
Well, hello, everybody. I just put in the chat, could you put your cameras on? I'm really not used to, I don't like to speak in the dark.
Yes, black boxes.
So, because you're going to have things to do to share with each other. Okay, I know a couple of people. I know some names out there. Hi, nice to see you. And it looks like, is everybody from Poland? No. I know Lynn is not in Poland. And Fernando, you're not in Poland, are you?
No, I'm in Brazil.
You're in Brazil. Cool. Georgia. Oh. The US, I know Lynn. Anywhere else? Okay, well, I'm in Czech Republic. Okay.
Tamari is probably in, yes. Oh, yes, you mentioned her. Yes.
Yeah.
Also a friend from BC circle.
Okay, so I've actually never done a webinar before. So I'm going to just pretend like we're together, and it will make it easier for me. So the first thing you need to do is that you're going to actually participate a little bit. The first thing you need is a piece of paper. Does everybody have a piece of paper? It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be half a sheet. It can be even just a small slither of a piece of paper. Hello, Turkey.
Yeah, I'm just getting my piece of paper.
Yes, everybody, you need a little piece of paper because this is how you would start this first thing with your students. So today, for me, I started language when I was like 5 because as Lucia said, I started school in another country. I started school in Germany. So I thought everybody spoke another language. But when I went back to the United States, I discovered it wasn't true. But I then started French when I was 9. So I'm here in France. I speak French, even though I lie to my students. I tell them that I don't speak French. And it works because then they don't bother me every 2 seconds to ask me, what does this mean? What does this mean? But when I was a student studying French, I was quite shy and I didn't speak. I was kind of afraid to speak. I didn't know if I could speak. I was quite shy. I know you wouldn't believe it now, but I was. And so for me, it's quite important to try to help people to know that they can actually produce the language that they're studying. I think that it's really encouraging to students when you're able to do something and then they come to you and say, oh, like even a business person saying, hey, I had a meeting. I had this happen once. I had a guy and he came back and he goes, I had a meeting with 10 Texans and I could understand. And he led a meeting for over an hour. So today, all we're going to do is we're going to kind of work together to look at some activities you may know, you may not know, and you may want to retweak them. Maybe for your own situation, it gives you an idea and you go, I could do that, but I need to change it for this or this or this. And that's what I love about trying to share different ideas is that you don't have to do the exact same thing. But I think as teachers, if we take the concept, we can then transform it to our situation. So this first piece of paper, it's going to be about you. And the first activity I'm going to show you now. So I'm going to have some slides. Let's see if I know how to do this. Slideshow. Let's see, does that work? Okay, does this go? Yeah. So the first thing that we're going to try is something called the human library. Okay, no, I don't want to do this. I hope this goes off. Should be back. No, start rehearsing. Okay. I don't want this on really. Oh well, it's okay. I don't know what that is. It's called the human library. And what I would like you to do, because it's about a library, but it's about the human library, which means that it's about us. And so what I would like you to do with your piece of paper is I would like you to think of you. And if you were a book, what title would you give yourself? What kind of book would you be? What do you want people to discover about you? Do you have a story to tell others? So while you're thinking of that, I'm just going to continue to explain what is the human library. Okay, if I can get it to move. So basically, it's the idea that when you go to the library, the bookstore, we sometimes just look at the cover. We don't want to judge others by just how they look. So the human library, I'm just going to read this, is designed to build a positive framework for conversations that can challenge stereotypes and prejudices through dialogue. So some people have things that it's really hard to share with other people, or they have an experience. Once in a class, I did this, And one guy, he gave his title as allergy or allergic. And the class, we were like, what? Allergic? What is that? That's kind of a strange title. And we, because it was kind of a spontaneous thing that happened in the class, we asked for permission if he could explain to us. And he explained that he had a very rare condition, that he was allergic to water touching his skin. And then you should have heard the questions. And he was open enough in that situation to answer the questions. And we were all so moved because we didn't expect that. I think I was sharing, I was going to do a talk on it, and I was sharing with my class what I was doing, and they wanted to know more, and it just spontaneously happened. So today, we're going to hear a little bit, what is this human library?
So the Human Library is a global movement, but this is the first time we're doing it here at Fairfield. We have, I think, a little over 40 volunteers, 40 human books, who will be sharing their stories. So we'll have students look on a board and see the number of available books and their titles and say, okay, I want to check that book out. And they'll go off to a quiet area of the library and talk for about 15 to 20 minutes about an identity that they didn't know before.
My book title is called Rootless, Growing Up as a Military Kid. I decided to share my story because living in the military community, you kind of know about the struggles of a military kid and what they go through, but outside the military circle, that isn't expressed or shown at all. My father wasn't a big part of my life just because he couldn't be there. When I grew up, I went to a school that was mostly military kids, and it's very difficult when orders come around. There's kind of this air around all the kids knowing I might have to say goodbye to you, I might have to say goodbye to you. We threw goodbye parties for people in class, like every 2 weeks, just saying, you know, we're gonna miss you, we love you. But next week there'd be 3 more kids in. But while you're there, you have to make the best of it. I think the best part of being in a military family is being extremely close to my family. I have a little brother, and we're best friends. We're inseparable now because of the experience we had growing up. So I'm totally grateful that through all those hardships, we were able to grow closer as a family.
The title of my book is Living Ambiguously. I was born gay, but raised Catholic, and a lot of people from both of those communities kind of tell you different things about yourself. But if you can get past the stereotypes that they give you, you can find a way to live in and appreciate both of them. And as a Catholic person, you're good and you go to church and you pray, and then you start processing this other thing about, oh, but this is who I am. This is part of me, and I can't just pray that away. I can't just get rid of it by saying it's not there. You know, yes, I am part of this religious tradition that has been, you know, huge in shaping the values that I have, but I can also be happy with, you know, who I am as a person.
I learned a lot. I listened to a story about a girl who came here from Nepal. I just learned how fortunate we are, and like how when they come here, they're like so inspired and they want to bring it back to their own country and teach them what they learned.
The whole experience wasn't what I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be more formal, when in reality it was a conversation. People would tell me their experiences that they related to and things that I didn't think could ever be relatable to other people. So it's good that now I know that that community is there as well.
So I was going to stop sharing for a second. So that's the Human Library, and I've done it in different ways. I first heard about it at TESOL, and I was so like, wow, because they actually, I think there was a school in Washington State, and they actually planned it in a library on campus. And so they had all their students participate, or actually maybe students who wanted to participate, because it can be quite vulnerable that you are going to share something that that maybe people don't know, or they have stereotypes about, or that you've never shared before. So I'm not going to have you share exactly, but maybe some of you can just tell us what is your title. Maybe just from your title, we would go, oh, I want to read that book. So can you show your title or tell us your title?
Oh,
Okay, Marlon, I can't read it. It says what?
The Obsessed.
The Obsessed. Oh, that sounds interesting. Anybody else want to share their title? Okay, you can say it at the same time because it's really small to read. Or you can put them in the chat. Maybe that's more comfortable for you. I think you can share in the chat to everybody. What kind of title would you give?
constant change.
Awesome Change. The Man Who Doesn't Belong, 10 Years of My Life. Okay, these are all sounding really interesting. We want to pick up that book, huh? Any others? I think that when I did it, I think I had something about living as an army brat too, a child with a military dad, because it's quite different. So Unstoppable, No Way to Dictatorship. So you can see already just finding a purpose. You can change your title every time because it's different aspects of who you are or what aspect you want to share. Now, what I've done in different situations is that we ask people, and in class when we ask, I also ask students to ask for permission if we can ask questions, because sometimes it seems, and I didn't force anybody. But then I did use it not only as a speaking activity, but you could use it as a writing activity. That students share their title and then they actually write. And I think that I did it once in a class where they were learning how to do presentations. So it gave them the writing part first of how to present. So they wrote it, and then it made it easier for them to present something later, because the presentation was supposed to be about them. So any ideas on that? Do you have any application of how you could do it? I wrote an essay in Vietnamese about myself, a stranger, a minority, and my integration journey. Sounds really, and you can see by the titles that automatically you want to just go, oh, what's that? I want to read more of that. And so it gives you kind of a basis to ask more questions. And you could work on a lot of skills with your students, asking questions, making titles, predicting what's going to be in it, how to be polite, how to be open, because some things are quite sensitive or maybe very different from who they are. So I think I have 4 activities that I'm going to show. So that's the first one. I think that one is probably the hardest because it's very personal. So here's an idea to write several chapters which help dive into different aspects of the title. Yeah. So that's what I love about trying to do a workshop, because all of us have ideas and we can help each other to go, oh, if we tweak it like this, we could do this. If we tweak it like that, we could do that. So anytime you have some ideas, just put it in the chat or feel free to open your mic, okay? So we're going to continue. Let's see if it's still here. So the next thing is called speed speaking. I know that you've probably, I don't know if it exists in Europe or in Poland or wherever you are, but have you heard of speed dating, where you go to these places and you can meet people, but you're only supposed to talk to them for, I think it's like 5 minutes. And this is from one of my colleagues here, Jeremy, who was the past president of here at TESOL France. And he uses it in his class, business class, with business students who have to practice their pitch for a professional presentation of themselves. And so what you do is that you can see this kind of room where you can set up a table in your room where you have 1-to-1 people. Like you have 10 in a row. So if you have 20, you have 2 rows. And people get to practice with 10 different people the same thing. And you go around the table. So it's 1-to-1, and you practice, and you get to practice more and more, and people become more and more comfortable doing it. Has anybody tried that before? It's okay. For me, it's okay if you talk. It would be better.
Yeah, okay. Can I?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Edison. I'm from Ecuador in South America. And what I do is something like this, but what I do is I learned it from one course I went to. It is the first time they speak for 1 minute.
Yeah.
And then they change to another table or another place, and then they talk about the same topic for 2 minutes.
Okay, that's a good idea too.
And then they have to adapt something else, and they speak with a third partner, and then they speak for 3 minutes.
Okay, good.
So that is one way to do it. Okay, so it's at the beginning it's 1 minute, so they can get some confidence.
Yeah.
And then once they get to do this, and they can elaborate more, and then they can produce more.
Yeah.
In their speaking.
Marlon, what about you?
Hi there. So yes, I am Marlene. Hi, Edison. I am also from Ecuador.
Okay.
Well, I do something like this, like a speed, let's say speed speaking in terms of like I don't know if you have seen the Shark Tank,
yeah.
where they have to present a product or describe a process in 5 minutes and go around telling their friends about this either process, describing this process, or describing a product.
Yeah, I've done that, where we do kind of like the Shark Tank presentations. So this is another kind of thing that you could do. So the idea is, for every activity, of course, think about your situation and how could you tweak it? How could you make it so that it works for your group? Because all our groups are not the same. So another one that it comes from a teacher in New York. And I was so amazed when I saw this. She used to work at, or she still works at New School in New York. And I think I went to visit, I had some students on immersion, and we went to visit. And it was the end of the semester. It's in a design school. And what she did was, it was a speaking class, I think, in the summer. And she taught her students how to eavesdrop in the New York buses and subway. Of course, it's not very polite to eavesdrop, you know? And so eavesdropping is when you're listening to a conversation, but you're not supposed to be listening to a conversation because it's very impolite. But she taught them to eavesdrop. And the challenge was to learn to listen for phrasal verbs. And so they would take the subway or take the bus or whatever, wherever they were going. They would eavesdrop. They would quickly have to take notes on the conversation, the situation, and then they would take it back to class. What they would do in class is that somehow they had to rewrite the dialogue. They made a book. They had to rewrite the dialogue. They had to write down the vocabulary and the way that it was used. And then at the end of the semester, they presented the different scenarios in front of other ESL students. It was a project-based activity where they had listening in the subway and everything, writing, reading each other's, and actually speaking. So it used all the skills. And I thought it was just wonderful because you learn how, and they could pick up on conversations, write them down, figure out what they meant, and then they were able to reproduce those activities. So I thought that was really great. And then I think the good thing is that they all felt so proud. They all had this booklet with all of these different dialogue kind of things, and they could present it to their other colleagues. So that's, I don't know if there's real name for it, but so this brings into mind that you can use surveys, questionnaires, project developments, and get them out of the classroom. In Paris, I try sometimes, and they're like, oh, but it's too hard to speak English. But there are lots and lots of English speakers in Paris. So you can actually do it in your area too. I'm sure that there are people who speak English, if you're especially in a city. Maybe if you're in the countryside, might be more difficult, but you can tweak this by doing different activities where they go out and they have to do something specific for listening and to be able to write it down. I don't know why I keep going out of, okay, so I have to do it like this. The next activity you might know are called TED Talk circles. I think maybe you heard of TED Talks. You might use them. Everybody loves TED Talks. I love TED Talks and I use them all kinds of ways. But one way to do a TED Talk is a TED Talk circle is that you assign, you have small groups in your class and each person gets to choose a TED Talk. In my classes, I think we had them choose a TED Talk that was less than 6 minutes. So they have to, sorry? I thought somebody said something. In my class, they had to watch the TED Talk. They had to create listening comprehension questions, vocabulary. And what they would do is in these circles in class, they would present their TED Talk to the other students because the other students have a different TED Talk. And that week they would lead the discussion. So they would they would give a summary of their TED Talk, ask people different questions that they wanted and have a discussion. So you have reading comprehension and then you have open-ended questions to further the discussion. And each week or each class period, somebody else had to present, but they were in small groups. So it's maybe a little less intimidating. And as the teacher, you're going around doing the, kind of surveying. And these are some of the things, that you could do. What was the speaker's thesis or main point? You can decide. This is an example of a sheet that somebody's class used. Circle the adjectives. You can design, they can design anything they want, or you could tell them the things that they need to look for in their TED Talk. So you have reading, you have speaking, you have writing. Any questions about those two last things? No?
So the small group chooses one TED Talk or one individual group, one student per in each small group?
Okay, if you have a group of like say 5, each person in the group chooses their own TED Talk that they're going to prepare. And they, in fact, are teaching the content of that TED Talk in that circle. It's not to the whole class, it's only to their circle. And they get to choose. Now you might put a limit depending on their level because some TED Talks are like 20 minutes. So that might be a bit too long. But there are TED Talks between 3 minutes and 6 minutes. So it gives them a chance to do vocabulary from the TED Talk, the content of the TED Talk, and maybe the ideas that are connected to something that you might be doing in class. You could give them a theme and they have to choose. But each person, I think I only did, I can't remember if we did 1 or 2 per week. You don't want to do much more than that because it actually takes time in the little circles. I would say that, you know, if somebody's leading leading it well, you know, each TED Talk and the discussion and the questions and things, depending on the kind of open-ended questions, could be minimum like 20 minutes. By the time you explain the story, you ask the questions, you do the different things. Of course, you can do a lot of different things with them. But in one of the schools where I work, they do it a lot, and it seems to work because it gives the student has all the control over what they're doing. And what you do is you're checking on them, or you might collect their you know, their paper with their questions and their answers on it after. But it's only for their small group. Does that make it clear? And did you understand the eavesdropping one? I love that one, where you have to get them out of the classroom.
Yes, I use that also when I wanted to for them to practice in direct and reported speech.
Yeah.
And then I used to work at a college, so I asked them to go to the cafeterias, to different places, and then they had like a 30-minute thing, and they came back. So, and then they came and said, I went to the cafeteria and so this, and I sometimes ask them to write as a direct speech and sometimes as reported speech, so they to see the changes in that exist in those two structures.
Yeah, I had something similar. I would call it gossip time.
Ah.
And I would ask my students to go around, you know, the school to see what gossips they would hear. And then we would get together in small groups and exchange the gossips. It was really funny. It really had a good time.
Yeah. I think that for me, it's, you know, in France, they're really, you know, they have a hard time sort of getting out of themselves. So sometimes if they get to choose and it's their subject, they can actually see that they can do it, it just works. I think it could work with all levels, but the TED Talk part, they can't be beginners because of course, you know, the TED Talks, you have to have some kind of understanding. But you can use longer ones with higher levels. And then you could use themes, because if you're doing business, they could do business or whatever. Mary is saying B1 plus, yeah. Because you want them to be able to do the different skills that are there. Any other ideas in terms of how to tweak it? How to change it maybe? Or adapt it to your situation?
Well, you know, you could also use documentaries instead of TED Talk circles, like from National Geographic. They have some really short documentaries that would work the same way. Yeah. I think there would be even more visuals, you know. The TED Talks are interesting, but since it's only one guy speaking to a public, you know, they don't exploit too much the visuals that you can explore when you have a documentary. So I prefer to use documentary.
I had the same idea. Yeah, I hadn't heard that before. I guess you could use it with any kind of video.
Yeah, for sure.
That they have to present it.
Yeah, there's a series from National Geographic called Footprint Reading Library. There are really short documentaries. They're like around 100 different little easy readers, and they all come with their documentaries. And each documentary is between 3 to 5 minutes maximum. You know, they're really good for stuff like this.
That's a good idea. Footprint Reading Library.
Yes,
from National Geographic?
National Geographic, yeah. NGL, National Geographic Learning, yeah. I can show you some, maybe. Let me see.
Okay.
These are the easy readers. They're really short, as you can see, right?
Okay.
You have several different easy readers. This was about Barcelona. You have about animals, you have about culture, you have about places. They're very cool, you know, science, and they all come with a video and the audio. And this is really good for something like that.
Yeah. So out of the three things, what have you guys heard of before? You've heard of the Human Library? Have any of you used that before? No? Do you think it could work in your situation?
So I can share, I participated in a human library event before as a human book.
Yeah.
So I think it has a lot of potential, but it requires some preparation. So I think it kind of makes sense to do it as part of a school or university. This university organized it and I participated. But it sounds like a good idea. It just needs very good preparation, I think.
Okay.
It's like a project, really, right?
Well, I actually, for me, I did plan it, but I didn't go to that extent because in France, it's quite daunting to ask them to divulge personal. So, and I did it, but I tweaked it. Once was kind of accidentally, like the guy who's allergic to water, and he explained all these things to us because he had to go through treatments. Even if it rained, it was like a disaster. His skin just got affected. So he was quite open to answer all the questions, but I didn't force people to do that because it wasn't a planned thing. It kind of just was spontaneous. Another time that it was planned, it was combined with the writing activity. And so it gave them an occasion to write it and then read it because it was first year university. And so they're a little bit more intimidated about it. But I recently had somebody in Ireland tell me that they had heard me explain this and they tried it and it's working. I don't know in what context he's doing it, but it's working. And then we talked about the speed speaking, where you take, different people in a row and you can do all kinds of things. If you're practicing short dialogues, even I think for beginners, you could do it. Even for young learners, I think that they could do it because they could write it and they're actually practicing and practicing until they get it. And I think that gives them a lot of different things. I wrote down some ideas. So news, if they have to recount the news or pitches or give a short summary of something that they've read or they've done, they could practice with the writing first and then the speaking, and then just general sharing. And apparently the application is that it can take place in all classes, all ages, as well as seminars. So you decide, I think, the thing that you're trying to have them perfect, and then you have them work on that. So there's a lot of, yes, role play, debating. Somebody else is writing here. Yeah, so all of those things. So the idea for just us looking at retweaking things is to remind us of, because I think that even for me, it's like you forget that, oh, that little activity, yeah, that could be adapted for here and it's good. Lower repetition is good, but it may lower their engagement. Well, these were business students, so they needed to get their pitch right. I don't know. I think that Jeremy, he uses it actually as an assessment tool. So by the end, they actually have to present it and then he assesses because there's too many students in the class so he's listening as they're going along and he uses it as assessment. Fluency lines, circles with familiar topics so that they can talk as much as possible. Yeah, can you explain that? What's a fluency line?
So it's kind of similar. I actually put a link to my YouTube video that I recorded. It's one of my favorite activities, and it is based on this activity that is called 4-3-2. You give students a familiar topic so that they can talk as much as possible, and the goal is to help them to practice fluency, right? The ability to talk naturally.
Right.
naturally without too much hesitation.
Exactly.
So the first time they talk to a partner and they talk for 4 minutes. The second time they talk to another partner for 3 minutes. And the last time they talk for 2 minutes. So there's some repetition, but because the partner is different, there's still a reason to communicate.
Exactly.
The time conditions are different, so they have to change their language. So that's the traditional activity, but I feel like 4 minutes is really long. So I often ask them maybe to do 2 minutes and then to 1.5 and then 1.
Yeah.
And also I put them in 2 lines so that if you just move one person up the top of the line, they already have a different partner the second time.
Yeah, that's very similar. Yeah, I think that's the idea for fluency. And I don't know exactly how Jeremy does it, but he told me that he uses it actually for part of his assessment as well. Because I think it's at the end of something that they're doing where they have to present. And then, of course, the eavesdropping has lots of applications in terms of surveys, questionnaires, reports, you know, you could even do cultural things. And I thought that the idea of using all of the skills was important, that they are listening, they're reading, they're writing, and they have to actually speak it or perform it at the end. I think
speed speaking is also really nice to prepare students for tests like IELTS. You know, on the IELTS, the one question is describing something. So this really works for something like that.
Yeah. So, and the last thing I wanted to share, at least in terms of an idea to retweak, are all the video kind of projects that you can do. So in my class last semester for 3rd-year students, and I had never done this before, and I had actually never seen any, so I had to do some research, they had to create a video CV. And so during the semester, we worked on business skills. So we were working on CVs. And for the school project for 3rd-year students was they had to produce a video of less than 2 minutes. Now, some people, so I tried to show them different examples where people introduce themselves and kind of recounted their CV, but in a talking mode. And you can do it in different situations. They can choose, but it's filmed. And what happens is that they're kind of explaining the different elements on their CV. When it doesn't work so well, because I had low-level students of 3rd year who were like, at the beginning of the semester, they were less than 300 on the TOEIC. So it was really difficult for them. But some of them were able to interconnect their personal hobbies, their soft skills, their experience into something quite natural that they taught. I had one guy in particular, his hobby is photography, and he got it. He introduced himself in a personal way, using his own hobby, explaining the things that he's learned in terms of business skills to introduce himself, his CV. But it's not like reading a CV. Some people did that, and that wasn't exactly the point. But you can do a project where they can try to do a video CV. And the threat was that we were going to upload them to LinkedIn. And I think in one class, another school, we did upload them to LinkedIn. So because if you go on LinkedIn, there are people who have video CVs where in less than 2 minutes, they give you an overview of themselves. Another video project is to do, or it can be audio as well, is to do broadcasting. And in one class, what we did was, and I guess that goes with the podcast, is that they could produce a short, you know, podcast or a film. And I had this one class, they did some really great projects where sometimes it was 2 people and they had like a radio show, or they would, you know, a debate about something or a discussion about something. So that's an interesting, and they had to learn how to actually produce the broadcast. And I think there's a book by Thomas Strasser, who's in Austria, and he goes through all the steps and the different kind of web software you can find on internet to actually do that, so that you can integrate sound and sound noises and all the things that to fade in, to fade out, and it explains everything. And the students did it. A friend of mine, she works in Bordeaux and she has university exchanges. So you can also do short videos of your students and they're introducing themselves or the culture to, I think she has students in the United States that she's doing that with. And then of course, presentations when we were in COVID, and when I have classes that like last semester, we're working on persuasive communication and we didn't have time. We only had like 18 hours of class. So with 25 people or more, you don't have time to have everybody present. So they had to present on video, and this is advanced level class. And so they were 7 to 10 minutes and they could choose the topic and they had to give like a TED Talk presentation, but on video. And then I uploaded them, or they uploaded them on Padlet. And so all the students could see them on Padlet and write comments. And then in class, I had a couple of the people actually redo in person their video project that they had done because they were so good. And some of them were just so amazing that they just knew it word for word and they really got the gist of what was a TED Talk and how to convey a message and to have the body language and to challenge or have a call to action at the end. Whatever they were trying to do, they were quite successful. So those are some ideas that I think we can revisit. And but sometimes we just forget that there's lots of ways that we can encourage the oral communication. So any ideas for you guys about any of these video projects? Have you done any video projects that could be interesting for us to hear?
I did one really cool. Here in Brazil, we have a lot of parties, you know, I mean, a lot of festivals. Every month, there's like 2 or 3 different parties or festivals, religious, most of them. So I would ask them to do like a reporting event. I will get them in pairs or trios, and I'll ask them to go to one of these parties.
Yeah.
And elaborate some questions and try to find tourists and interview the tourists about the party, about you know, something about the party, about what they're doing in the city, things like this.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, right now the tourists are starting to come back a little bit, and that could be a good idea to have them try to find those people who don't normally live there. Anyone else have any ideas for kind of video projects? Marlene, you had your hand up before.
Oh, yeah. Well, I teach B1 level students. So we use Cambridge books, and I take advantage of some of the speaking tasks that they have. Well, first of all, the first task that I always make them do is a video introducing themselves. I have a large classroom, and sometimes it's difficult to get to know them if I give them like 5-10 minutes each in the classroom. So I give them the time to prepare their own video and send it to a WhatsApp group that we create. So the first thing they do is introduce themselves using a video. Then there is like another like reporting news. I make them watch the news. I create groups, of course, and I make them watch news and give them, of course, some time to prepare and everything. And each one of them, each member of the group chooses the topic that they want. If they want to talk about sports, gossip, celebrities, actual news, international news, national news. So actually they're pretty good at using this technology. They put background noises, they put background like a stage, like they are sitting on a stage, kind of an anchorman, and they have fun doing that. Another thing that I make them do is talk about different cultures. I try to include the culture features in the classroom. So I make them, again, in groups, choose a country and try to find those interesting facts that we don't normally know about that specific country.
Yeah.
Not just the regular stuff that everyone can find on Wikipedia. So kind of doing some more research about it.
Yeah. One thing, and not related to ELT, but before I came to France, I was working in a university. We created a class, and that reminded me of that. And there was already a main class established in the university, like about the Pacific Rim countries. And what I did was I found students who had just arrived from those countries, and I trained them on how to work in an English, in an American university context, and they co-taught with the professor. So that's a good idea, to have new people be able to share things about a culture that might be being studied, especially if you have multiple cultures in your schools, so that they could learn firsthand from those people. In France, I think it's a little bit hard to bring in guests and things. So I always like to do that before, when I lived in the States. Anyone else have any other ideas?
Maybe this is some, oh, I'm sorry. Someone.
Go ahead.
I have talked a lot.
It's okay.
So I also use Google Earth to give presentations. You can create a project there, and you can take people to different places. And it's actually really nice because you have like 360 views, and you can zoom in and zoom out. So I recorded a video about that to give a tour of the city of Pittsburgh. And then later on, I asked students to do the same with some of the places in the US, because we learned about different cities and places in the US. So maybe it is something that you may be interested in exploring. I have a video about it. If you are interested, I can find it and put it in the chat.
Yeah, but that's what this is about, because we're trying to find ideas and just retweak them for us. Any other ideas? Okay, I don't think, okay, so
I think I teach I say cadets who are going to become English police officers.
Yeah.
So what I ask them to do, for example, is to ask them what kind of branch of the police they are going to pursue, and then they have to make a project on that. If they are going to talk about human rights, or they have special operations or things like that. So they have to make a presentation on that specific branch of the force. Okay, so I make them work in groups, and then they have to, each one of them has to say something.
Yeah.
That's something, and then they make they can present it as a video, or they can make a how can I say? It's a poster or something else. They choose the way they want to show it, but the idea is for them to speak, like, and explain an infographic.
Oh yeah, an infographic, yeah. It reminded me of another idea that I didn't put here, is we used to have the first year students read a book. And it's very difficult for them the first time. A lot of times at 18, they've never read a book in English. But you give them the list of young learner books and they choose, and they have a ways to do it. And what I did, because you reminded me, poster session. You know, when you go to a conference, you sometimes have poster sessions where you have these big posters and people are standing there and they have to talk about their posters. Well, I did it for the books. And so the students made a poster that related to their book, however they wanted. And we literally went around the room and each person had to present their poster. So they got to talk about their book in a different way. And that was pretty successful as well. So you just reminded me of that. So in this conclusion, I just say what comes to mind. How can we encourage the use, the verbal use of the language, and at all levels and all ages? And I think that if we just, because I think that for me, they can study, and they can study grammar, but if they don't speak, you know, they're always frustrated if they can't speak. So to give them things where they can own it, where they can maybe sometimes choose, I think they have more ownership and they're happy at doing that. So I don't know if these gave you some ideas or maybe ideas that you already had to go, oh yeah, maybe I could add this element or this element, but hopefully that's the case. So thank you very much. And that's my email if you want to get in touch. I don't know if anybody has any questions or any additional things to say. Be my guest. We have a bunch in the links in the chat, so make sure you can copy those. Maybe Lucy, are we going to be able to save the chat?
Deb, can I add something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that sometimes, and I have kind of experimented with this. Sometimes we don't need to be very sophisticated in our ways to find and make or encourage students to speak.
Yeah.
I like to create like a friendly environment in my classroom, and I suppose every teacher here does the same. And the way that it started like an idea. I wanted my students to practice past simple tenses and some prepositions, especially with time. And I would come every Monday and ask them about their weekend. And I would give them like a minute or two to talk about their weekend. And they even started developing this idea and started sharing like pictures of what they did. They started like short videos of their weekend. And in that way, they became more engaged in speaking because it didn't feel like a task. Yeah. It felt like just a conversation between friends and between the teacher and gossip and kind of a telenovela, a soap opera kind of thing. And I really like, I even had a classroom where this student was like having a fight with a friend, and every week she would update us and other students listening to the conversation. What happened with your friend? And it was so fun. Every Monday, I think they would wait for every Monday for me to ask, so what did you do over the weekend?
Yeah, that's good.
That's it. Thank you.
Especially if it's an ongoing story. Well, what happened after that?
Exactly.
No, because it's the more natural thing. Right before coming, it's the first time that it happened to me. I have a class at the Sorbonne, and we were on the school got blockaded a couple of weeks before the end of the semester. And so I ended up going to a cafe with my class, and it was I think there were about 18 of them, and just talking. We didn't do class, but just talking, you know. And they said, oh, let's have a picnic after final exams. So today we had the picnic, and now they want to have a dinner. Okay, well, dinner. And they're encouraged. And I said, that's what you need to do. That's how you make your language develop. You just do normal, natural things. So I think that if we can do like you did, like you said, and try to especially at university level, to tell them it's not about school. It's really about learning and using and being able to share. So, but sometimes, at least in France, it's a little difficult. I don't know about you guys. So thank you very much for letting me spiel on.
Oh, there is somebody waiting to enter the webinar.
Yeah,
Maybe this person was just eliminated in the meantime. Thank you, Debbie, very much. I'm really happy to be able to participate in this historical webinar, the first webinar. But this is a good beginning of the whole series of webinars that you might want to inspire us with. So I would like to ask you to remember about IATEFL Poland and all the people whom we are having right now in this room, and maybe when the next school academic year begins, I would like to again try to ask you to have a webinar for all of us. Would it be okay?
So I'm just putting my email in the chat. And also that just a little announcement that TESOL France is having a spring day on June 4th. If you want to join us on ESP, EMI, CLIL, those kind of things, you can look at the link and you can join. Some sessions are by distance, and so you can join us. And don't forget, also, I'm going to make a plug for IATEFL Poland. Their call for papers closes at the end of this month. And if you want to join us, I'm going to go in Poland in September. They have their annual conference, and it's going to be face-to-face again. I'm so happy to see everybody again. So yes, so be encouraged where you are. Hopefully you're going a little bit face-to-face again, and either see you in IATEFL or see you at TESOL in TESOL France in Paris in June, if you can come, or you can join us by online, or at TESOL International in Poland and Portland next March. But maybe I'll see you before then. You have my email. You can contact me. I can send you links to these different ideas if you want, but you can just look them up, and I'm sure you can find the materials. The human library, you might even have one in your area that's happening. So you just look it up and you can see if somebody's organizing one. It doesn't have to, it's not necessarily related to English teaching, but just the whole idea of being able to share with people, to break down ideas that people have and give other people a way to share with one another. So thank you very much. I'm really happy. It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.